21 Black LGBTQ celebrities who lost everything to incurable diseases. They were celebrated, applauded, and admired, yet many of them died in silence. Behind legendary voices, groundbreaking films, and unforgettable performances were lives shaped by secrecy. Luther Vandross. Luther Vandross was one of the most recognizable voices in modern R&B, a singer whose smooth phrasing and emotional control reshaped love ballads for an entire generation. Born in 1951 in New York City, he first entered the music industry not as a star, but as a background vocalist and arranger, working with artists like David Bowie, Chaka Khan, and Roberta Flack. That behind-the-scenes period sharpened his musical discipline and gave him an almost obsessive attention to detail, an element that later defined his solo work. His breakthrough came in 1981 with the album Never Too Much, which sold over 2 million copies in the United States alone and earned him his first Grammy nomination. Over the next 2 decades, Luther released 13 studio albums, won 8 Grammy Awards, and scored multiple #1 hits on the Billboard R&B chart. His voice became synonymous with romance, intimacy, and emotional vulnerability, yet his private life remained carefully guarded. Vandross rarely discussed personal relationships in public, choosing instead to let his music speak for him, a decision shaped by industry pressure. In an industry driven by image, Luther Vandross proved that emotional honesty, expressed through sound alone. Alberta Hunter. Alberta Hunter lived long enough to witness her own rebirth, a rare achievement in music history. Born in 1895, she rose from Chicago's early blues scene to international recognition during the 1920s, recording songs that carried both resilience and restraint. Her voice was never about technical excess. It was about control, timing, and emotional clarity. Audiences heard strength, but rarely glimpsed the private cost of survival in a rigid entertainment world. During her early success, Hunter toured Europe, performed in Paris, and collaborated with leading jazz musicians of her generation. Yet by the late 1950s, she made a decision that stunned the industry. She walked away from music entirely. Rather than fade into obscurity, Alberta reinvented herself, enrolling in nursing school and spending nearly 2 decades working in New York hospitals. This was not retreat, it was preservation. In the late 1970s, after mandatory retirement from nursing, Alberta returned to the stage at an age when most performers are long forgotten. Her comeback performances revealed a voice weathered by time, but sharpened by experience. Critics noted that while her range had narrowed, her interpretive power had deepened. Few in the audience knew she was quietly battling kidney disease, performing while her health steadily declined. Alberta Hunter passed away in 1984 at the age of 89, leaving behind a legacy defined by autonomy rather than fame alone. She is remembered as a blues pioneer, but also as a woman who chose dignity over exposure and control over compromise. In an industry that often consumes its legends, Alberta Hunter stood apart by stepping away, returning on her own terms, and leaving without explanation. Gladys Bentley. Gladys Bentley was a presence that could not be reduced to novelty. Rising during the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s, she became one of the most talked-about performers in New York nightlife, known for her commanding piano style, improvised lyrics, and sharp wit. On stage at venues like the Ubangi Club, Bentley wore tailored suits and top hats, bending gender norms at a time when simply existing outside rigid expectations invited danger. Her performances blended humor, provocation, and musical skill, making her a central figure in Harlem's cultural explosion. Bentley's popularity did not shield her from pressure. As public tolerance narrowed in the 1940s and 1950s, she faced increasing scrutiny from authorities and the press. Opportunities dried up, and survival required painful compromise. In the early 1950s, she publicly claimed to have renounced her previous lifestyle, a move widely understood as an act of self-protection rather than transformation. The bold confidence that once defined her stage persona gradually disappeared from public view. Away from the spotlight, Bentley's health declined. She suffered recurrent infections and chronic respiratory illness at a time when medical understanding and treatment options were limited. In 1960, Gladys Bentley died at the age of 52, largely absent from the headlines that once followed her every move. No major tributes marked her passing. Today, Gladys Bentley is recognized not for controversy, but for courage. She expanded the boundaries of performance and identity long before language existed to protect artists like her. Her legacy lives in the freedom later generations found the strength to claim openly. Wilmer, Little Axe, Broadnax. Wilmer, Little Axe, Broadnax possessed a voice that filled churches with reverence and authority. Born in 1916, he rose to prominence in gospel music as a powerful tenor whose recordings and live performances moved congregations across the American South. His singing carried conviction, restraint, and a sense of devotion that placed him among respected gospel figures of his time. Behind that spiritual command, Broadnax lived with constant fear. As a transgender man and a gay performer in a deeply conservative religious environment, disclosure meant total erasure. He guarded his privacy carefully, avoiding physical contact and maintaining emotional distance, even from fellow musicians. Gospel music gave him a platform, but it also confined him to silence. When Broadnax eventually revealed his true identity later in life, the consequences were immediate. Invitations vanished, recordings stopped circulating, and the community that once praised his voice withdrew its support. He spent years in isolation, separated from the music that had defined his purpose. In 1992, already gravely ill, he returned briefly to sing in a small church setting, his voice weakened by terminal lung cancer, but his composure intact. Wilmer Little Axe Broadnax died later that year at the age of 76, alone and largely unacknowledged by the institutions he had served. His story is not one of scandal, but of exclusion. It reveals how faith, when fused with fear, can deny humanity to those who give it their entire lives. His voice endures as proof that devotion does not require permission to be real. Nell Carter. Nell Carter was a performer whose warmth filled stages long before audiences understood how much silence shaped her private life. Born in 1948, she rose through musical theater before achieving mainstream recognition on Broadway and television, earning a Tony Award, multiple Emmy nominations, and widespread acclaim for her vocal strength and emotional range. To the public, Carter embodied confidence, humor, and resilience, a performer who seemed fully at ease under bright lights. Behind the success, however, Nell lived cautiously. During the height of her career, Hollywood remained deeply hostile toward openly lesbian performers, particularly Black women. Carter chose discretion over disclosure, structuring her public life to protect her work and livelihood. She married, raised children, and maintained a carefully controlled image, while her most meaningful relationships remained out of public view. This constant division between self and persona took a quiet, emotional toll. Health challenges gradually became central to her life. Nell was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, a condition that worsened over time despite continued professional commitments. She continued acting and performing while enduring chronic pain, fatigue, and repeated hospitalizations. Colleagues later noted her determination to work through physical discomfort rather than risk losing opportunities. In 2003, complications related to diabetes led to multiple organ failure. Nell Carter died at the age of 54, leaving behind a career that balanced vulnerability with strength. Her story is not one of secrecy alone, but of endurance. She navigated an industry that rewarded talent while punishing honesty, and she did so without bitterness. Today, Nell Carter is remembered as a groundbreaking entertainer whose legacy rests not only in awards, but in the quiet dignity with which she survived a system not built to protect her truth. Moms Mabley built laughter out of defiance. Born in 1894, she became one of the earliest Black female comedians to achieve national prominence, mastering timing, irony, and misdirection at a time when comedy offered few protections for women, let alone queer women of color. Her stage persona, elderly, playful, and sharp, allowed her to critique racism, sexism, and social hypocrisy without immediate reprisal. Comedy became both her shield and her weapon. By presenting herself as harmless, Moms gained access to spaces that were otherwise closed. She performed at the Apollo Theater, Carnegie Hall, and on national television, delivering jokes that slipped hard truths past audiences who were laughing too loudly to object. Offstage, however, her life was marked by restraint. Her romantic relationships with women were kept private, not out of shame, but survival. As she aged, health issues emerged. Years of smoking contributed to declining lung function, and recurring heart problems slowed her pace. Still, Moms continued performing well into her later years, believing that laughter was both obligation and identity. Even when illness weakened her body, she resisted stepping away from the stage, afraid that silence would erase her. Moms Mabley died in 1975 at the age of 82. She left behind no grand confessions, only a body of work that challenged power through humor. Her legacy endures because she understood something rare. Laughter could disarm cruelty, and comedy could carry truth farther than confrontation ever could. Billy Preston. Billy Preston was a musical prodigy whose brilliance often unfolded in the background, even as his sound shaped some of the most influential records of the 20th century. Born in 1946, he was already performing publicly as a child, sharing stages with gospel legends before entering the mainstream music world. His gift as a keyboardist led him to collaborate with the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Eric Clapton, and numerous other icons, earning him the rare distinction of being the only artist credited as a featured performer on a Beatles single. Despite working alongside superstars, Preston's solo career revealed a different dimension of his artistry. Songs like Nothing from Nothing and Will It Go Round in Circles topped charts in the 1970s, blending funk, soul, and gospel into an accessible yet deeply personal sound. Yet success did not translate into ease. Preston lived much of his life under pressure, navigating fame while guarding his private identity in an industry that offered little compassion for vulnerability. In the later years of his life, Preston faced serious health challenges. Long-term complications, including hypertension and kidney disease, gradually weakened his body. By the early 2000s, his condition had deteriorated significantly, requiring dialysis and extended hospitalization. In 2006, after months in a coma caused by multiple organ failure, Billy Preston died at the age of 59. His legacy is not defined by illness, but by influence. Billy Preston expanded the role of keyboards in popular music and bridged gospel intensity with mainstream appeal. Though often working behind the spotlight, his sound remains unmistakable, woven permanently into the fabric of modern soul and rock history. Tamara Dobson. Tamara Dobson projected strength long before audiences understood how deliberately that image was constructed. Born in 1947, she entered public life as a model and quickly transitioned into acting, becoming a defining figure of 1970s cinema. Her breakout role as Cleopatra Jones presented a rare image at the time, a tall, commanding Black woman who led with authority rather than submission. The character resonated deeply, offering representation that was both aspirational and unapologetic. Dobson's presence challenged industry norms, but it also imposed limits. Hollywood's expectations narrowed her opportunities, and she became selective about roles rather than accept characters that diminished her impact. As trends shifted, Dobson withdrew from the spotlight, prioritizing privacy over exposure. Her personal life remained guarded, shaped by an era that discouraged honesty from women whose careers depended on public perception. Health complications emerged quietly. Tamara was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a condition that gradually affected her mobility and stamina. Later, she developed lung-related complications, which worsened over time. Choosing dignity over spectacle, she distanced herself from media attention, relying on close family rather than public sympathy. Tamara Dobson died in 2006 at the age of 59. Though her filmography was limited, her cultural impact was not. She left behind an enduring symbol of strength, one that influenced generations of performers seeking space to exist on their own terms. Her legacy rests not in quantity, but in presence, proving that a single role, carried with conviction, can reshape how power is seen on screen. Sterling Street Jacques. Sterling St. Jacques was a fleeting phenomenon whose impact outpaced the brevity of his life. Emerging in the early 1980s, he became one of the first black male models to break through the rigid gates of high fashion, commanding attention on runways and in editorial spreads at a time when diversity was still treated as novelty. His presence, elegant, kinetic, unmistakable, fit perfectly with the era's appetite for spectacle, from Paris catwalks to the electric haze of Studio 54. Fashion celebrated Sterling's image, but the industry rarely protected the person beneath it. The pace was relentless. Constant travel, late nights, physical strain, and the unspoken demand to remain flawless. In an environment where vulnerability was currency no one accepted, he kept moving, kept showing up, and kept smiling. Behind the scenes, his health was quietly failing. In 1984, Sterling was diagnosed with liver cancer. He chose discretion, continuing professional commitments without public announcements or canceled appearances. Pain management replaced rest. Work replaced recovery. Friends later recalled how quickly his condition escalated. One morning, he collapsed in his Manhattan apartment after his liver ruptured. There was no time for intervention. Sterling St. Jacques died in 1984 at the age of 27. His passing received little attention beyond fashion circles, and his name gradually slipped from mainstream memory. Yet his legacy endures in what he represented, a door opened too early to be held open long. Sterling's career proved that black men could redefine beauty in elite spaces, even when the cost of entry was unforgiving. Sahara Davenport. Sahara Davenport lived where performance and truth converged. Born in 1986, she rose to prominence as a drag artist whose elegance and discipline set her apart. Best known for her appearance on RuPaul's Drag Race, Season 2, Sahara brought classical poise to a medium often defined by excess. Each look was intentional. Each movement carried precision earned through years of preparation. Behind the glamour, Sahara managed a serious congenital heart condition. Doctors warned that prolonged physical strain could be dangerous, advice she understood yet struggled to accept. For Sahara, performing was not an escape, it was alignment. On stage, she felt most herself, even as the demands placed increasing stress on her body. Despite the risks, she continued to perform, rehearsing meticulously and pacing her appearances with care. Those closest to her recalled a performer acutely aware of her limits, yet unwilling to surrender the one space where her identity felt complete. In 2012, Sahara suffered acute heart failure and was hospitalized in Baltimore. After several days unconscious, she passed away. Sahara Davenport died in 2012 at the age of 27. Her loss resonated deeply within the drag community, not as spectacle, but as a reminder of the quiet resilience behind performance. Sahara's legacy is not defined by competition rankings or television moments, but by intention. She chose authenticity repeatedly, understanding the risks, and used every opportunity to affirm that living fully, even briefly, could still leave a lasting imprint. J.D. Steele. J.D. Steele was a gospel singer whose influence extended far beyond church walls, even though much of his life was shaped by restraint. Born in 1960, Steele grew up immersed in sacred music, where discipline, harmony, and devotion were valued above personal expression. His voice, rich, steady, and controlled, made him a sought-after collaborator, and he later became widely known as a longtime background vocalist for Prince, appearing on recordings and live performances that bridge gospel tradition with contemporary sound. While his professional achievements were visible, Steele's personal journey unfolded quietly. In religious environments where conformity was often expected, he learned early how to separate faith from identity. Music became his refuge, a place where emotion could exist without explanation. Rather than pursue solo celebrity, he chose consistency, mentorship, and spiritual leadership, directing choirs and nurturing younger voices with patience rather than ambition. Later in life, Steele publicly acknowledged his sexuality, a decision that brought mixed reactions from communities that once celebrated him without question. Despite resistance, he remained committed to his faith and to music as service rather than spectacle. Health challenges followed. Years of physical strain and underlying conditions contributed to congestive heart failure, which gradually limited his strength. J.D. Steele died in 2021 at the age of 61. His passing did not spark headlines, but it left a deep absence within gospel and musician circles. Steele's legacy is defined not by controversy, but by quiet consistency. He demonstrated that spiritual devotion and personal truth need not cancel each other, even when acceptance arrives slowly. His voice continues to echo in recordings where sincerity mattered more than spotlight. Ethel Waters. Ethel Waters was a pioneer who carried the weight of firsts without ever being allowed full freedom. Born in 1896, she rose from poverty to become one of the earliest Black women to achieve national fame in American entertainment. Her career spanned blues, jazz, Broadway, film, and gospel, making her one of the most versatile performers of the 20th century. At a time when opportunities for Black women were narrowly defined, Waters expanded them through talent and discipline. Her success was built on adaptation. As musical tastes shifted, she transitioned seamlessly between genres, earning acclaim on Broadway and later becoming the first Black woman nominated for an Academy Award for acting. Publicly, she embodied professionalism and restraint. Privately, her life was shaped by caution. In an era hostile to same-sex relationships, Waters kept her most intimate bonds out of sight, protecting her career at the cost of openness. As she aged, physical exhaustion and illness took their toll. Diagnosed with uterine cancer, Waters chose to step away from performance rather than endure prolonged treatment in public view. She turned toward spirituality in her final years, seeking peace outside the industry that had both elevated and constrained her. Ethel Waters died in 1977 at the age of 80. Her legacy rests not only in achievements, but in endurance. She helped shape American performance culture while navigating barriers few today fully comprehend. Waters proved that survival itself could be a form of artistry, leaving behind a blueprint for those who followed, even when her own story remained carefully guarded. Howard Rollins. Howard Rollins was an actor whose promise arrived early and burned intensely. Born in 1950, he emerged in the 1970s as a striking presence on stage and screen, earning critical attention for performances that combined intelligence with emotional restraint. His breakthrough role in the Broadway production Raisin brought him a Tony Award nomination, followed by acclaimed film work in Ragtime. Rollins later reached a wider audience through television, most notably on In the Heat of the Night, where his quiet authority helped ground the series. As his visibility increased, so did pressure. Hollywood's expectations narrowed quickly, and Rollins found himself navigating scrutiny that extended beyond performance. He guarded his private life carefully, aware that disclosure could derail opportunities. This vigilance, coupled with the stress of sustained work, weighed heavily over time. In 1990, Rollins learned he was HIV positive. At a moment when stigma far outweighed understanding, he chose privacy over public narrative, continuing to act when possible and declining to let illness define his career. As the disease progressed, his health deteriorated rapidly. Recurrent infections, severe fatigue, and respiratory complications limited his ability to work. Howard Rollins died in 1996 at the age of 46. His passing marked the quiet end of a career that once suggested long-term greatness. Today, Rollins is remembered for performances that hinted at depth still unfolding. His legacy reflects both talent and the cost of working in an industry that offered acclaim without protection, leaving artists to carry their burdens alone. Bobby DeBarge. Bobby DeBarge was a singer whose voice carried vulnerability long before listeners understood its origin. Born in 1956, he rose to fame as the falsetto lead of the R&B group Switch, helping define a smooth, emotionally charged sound that influenced later generations of soul artists. Songs like There'll Never Be showcased his distinctive tone, light, expressive, and instantly recognizable. Success, however, arrived without stability. DeBarge struggled with addiction early in his career, a battle that intersected painfully with family conflict and the pressures of public life. While his music reached radio audiences nationwide, his personal circumstances grew increasingly fragile. Attempts at recovery were complicated by limited support and relentless expectations to perform. In the mid-1990s, DeBarge was diagnosed with AIDS, a revelation that arrived amid widespread misinformation and fear. His health declined swiftly. Weight loss, weakened immunity, and recurring infections limited his ability to sing, though he remained deeply connected to music until the end. Those close to him recalled moments when he tried to hum melodies despite physical exhaustion, clinging to the one expression that had always felt honest. Bobby DeBarge died in 1995 at the age of 39. His death closed a chapter marked by extraordinary talent and unfinished potential. Today, he is remembered not for controversy, but for a voice that shaped modern R&B while revealing how brilliance can coexist with vulnerability. His recordings endure as reminders that artistry often survives long after the artist is gone. Willie Smith. Willie Smith was a visionary who democratized fashion long before inclusivity became a marketing slogan. Born in 1948, he emerged in the late 1970s and early 1980s as one of America's most influential designers, celebrated for creating clothing that merged style with accessibility. Through his label, Willie Wear, Smith rejected exclusivity, designing garments meant to move with real bodies in everyday life. His work blended street sensibility with global inspiration, drawing from art, travel, and multicultural collaboration. At the height of his success, Smith was redefining what American fashion could look like. His collections sold widely, appearing in department stores rather than remaining confined to elite runways. He believed fashion should serve people, not intimidate them, a philosophy that resonated across racial and economic lines. Industry peers recognized his originality, and museums began collecting his work while he was still in his 30s. Behind the creative momentum, Smith faced a personal battle that unfolded quietly. In the mid-1980s, he was diagnosed with AIDS, at a time when the disease was surrounded by fear and misunderstanding. Rather than retreat, Smith continued to design, sketching ideas even as his physical strength faded. Friends later recalled his determination to keep working, as if creativity itself could resist decline. In 1987, Willie Smith died at the age of 39. The fashion world mourned the loss of a talent whose vision was still expanding. Today, Smith's influence remains visible in contemporary streetwear and inclusive design practices. He proved that fashion could be both expressive and humane, and that accessibility, when treated as principle rather than compromise, could become a lasting legacy. Essex Hemphill. Essex Hemphill wrote as if silence were the true enemy. Born in 1957, He emerged as a powerful poetic voice during the late 1980s and early 1990s, using language to confront race, sexuality, and mortality with unfiltered honesty. Hemphill was not interested in metaphor for its own sake. His work carried urgency, shaped by lived experience and political clarity. Through poetry, essays, and public readings, he challenged audiences to acknowledge realities often pushed aside. As a Black gay writer during the height of the AIDS crisis, Hemphill positioned his body and voice at the center of his art. He performed while visibly ill, refusing to let deterioration erase presence. His collections, including Ceremonies and Conditions, documented grief alongside resilience, insisting that vulnerability could coexist with strength. Hemphill's readings were described as confrontational yet intimate, drawing listeners into shared responsibility rather than passive sympathy. In the early 1990s, Hemphill's health declined rapidly due to AIDS-related complications. Despite frequent hospitalizations and severe fatigue, he continued writing and appearing publicly whenever possible. He understood that visibility mattered, not as spectacle, but as testimony. Friends recalled handwritten notes he sent during his final months, brief affirmations that he was still creating, still engaged. Essex Hemphill died in 1995 at the age of 38 from pneumonia related to AIDS. His legacy endures through words that remain unsoftened by time. Hemphill did not seek comfort in abstraction. He demanded recognition. In doing so, he expanded the space for Black queer voices in literature and left behind work that continues to speak with uncompromising clarity. Carl Bean. Carl Bean was a gospel singer and spiritual leader whose life bridged faith, music, and social courage at a moment when the cost of honesty was steep. Born in 1944, he rose within gospel circles as a powerful vocalist, eventually recording the 1977 hit, "I Was Born This Way." Released during a period of intense hostility toward LGBTQ people, the song functioned as both testimony and affirmation, reaching dance charts and gaining attention far beyond church walls. The response was swift and punitive. Bean faced rejection from religious institutions that had once welcomed his talent, and opportunities narrowed as controversy followed him. Rather than retreat, he reframed his calling. Understanding that faith could not be separated from compassion, Bean founded the Unity Fellowship Church, creating one of the first Christian congregations centered on affirming Black LGBTQ worshipers. The church became a sanctuary for those excluded elsewhere, offering community without conditions. Bean's influence extended into public service. He worked in HIV/AIDS advocacy during the height of the epidemic, supporting education, prevention, and care at a time when stigma often outweighed resources. His leadership emphasized dignity and visibility rather than fear. Though music had introduced him to the world, ministry became his enduring platform. In later years, Bean faced declining health, including congestive heart failure and complications related to diabetes. Even as physical strength waned, he remained engaged with his community, continuing to preach and mentor. Carl Bean died in 2021 at the age of 77. His legacy is defined by synthesis rather than opposition. Bean proved that belief and inclusion need not exist in conflict. Through music, ministry, and advocacy, he reshaped the boundaries of faith for those long denied space within it. Keith Barrow. Keith Barrow was a soul singer whose promise unfolded largely away from public view. Born in 1954, he grew up surrounded by music and social awareness, influenced by gospel traditions and the evolving sound of 1970s R&B. Possessing a smooth, expressive voice, Barrow was recognized within industry circles as a gifted songwriter and vocalist. Yet his career never reached the visibility his talent suggested. The obstacles were not artistic. During an era when disclosure could end careers, Barrow guarded his personal life carefully. Opportunities came sporadically, and recordings often remained unfinished. While peers found commercial success, Barrow worked quietly, writing, recording demos, and performing selectively. His music reflected intimacy rather than spectacle, shaped by reflection and restraint. In the early 1980s, Barrow's health deteriorated rapidly. He was diagnosed with age-related complications at a time when treatment options were limited and fear dominated public response. Hospitalized with severe pneumonia, he faced the illness with composure, focusing on what time remained rather than recognition denied. Friends later recalled his calm determination to keep creating, even as strength faded. Keith Barrow died in 1983 at the age of 28. His funeral was small and private, consistent with a life lived outside the spotlight. What remains are fragments, unreleased recordings, memories, and the acknowledgement of potential interrupted. Barrow's story is not one of failure, but of circumstance. He represents a generation of artists whose voices were shaped by talent, yet constrained by silence, leaving behind echoes rather than headlines. These stories don't end with applause, they end with questions. If these artists had lived in a more accepting world, would their lives have turned out differently? Would their health, careers, or happiness have been spared? Or did their struggles shape the very art we now revere? At Black Excellence Legends, we believe remembering means confronting uncomfortable truths, not just celebrating success. Now it's your turn. Which story moved you the most, and why? Do you think society has truly changed, or are we repeating the same patterns today? Share your thoughts in the comments, join the conversation, and don't forget to subscribe.